G'day, Justin Hogg here from RightSource, talking everything not-for-profits in the wonderful outdoors. Now, as an accountant who works with a lot of not-for-profits, I think it's pretty straightforward what your accountant should be offering your not-for-profits, but a couple of conversations I've had recently with those who are looking for help in their not-for-profit, and it's actually become apparent that a lot of people out there don't actually understand what an accountant can provide, or more importantly, and I suppose from my point of view, what I think an accountant should provide to a not-for-profit and how that's important and how that fits in. So that's what I thought I'd talk through. So the first thing, and it may not be the most obvious thing, but the first thing that I think an accountant should be providing a not-for-profit is financial mentoring. So in the not-for-profit space, it's a little different to normal business in that quite often people, or those who've started the not-for-profit or who are working in not-for-profit, aren't doing it because they want to run a business. They're doing it because they want to solve a problem, or they've got a purpose that they want to pursue. The business aspect of it is secondary, and sometimes it's something they're learning as they go. They're super passionate about the purpose, but the business side they need help on. That is absolutely one of the biggest areas that an accountant can provide help with. So working alongside, and for me, it's one of the things that I enjoy the most. Working alongside someone who's got the passion and the purpose and who's really wanting to change the world, and being there to help them learn and help them grow from an understanding point of view of how business works, to make sure that that passion and that purpose is captured and is supported by the business structures that they put around that. Yes, it's a not-for-profit, but it's still a business structure. So understanding that process and that financial mentoring so that they start to understand the best way to ensure that their passion and their purpose is fulfilled is absolutely, for me, hands down, the most important thing your accountant should provide. So that's the first thing. If you are looking for an accountant to support your not-for-profit, that's the first thing you should be looking for, is someone that you feel can be with you on that journey and provide that financial mentoring. The second thing, which is sort of closely related to it, and actually most things are actually related to that financial mentoring that sort of flows down to a lot of other aspects. But the next thing I would say is that help with the business process within the business. So looking at, or someone who can look at not just the finance, knocking it into a financial system or into Xero or something, but actually looking at the end-to-end. How do you go from, applying for a grant to acquitting the grant, to engaging a supplier, to paying the supplier, to putting in a staff member on, to paying them to their final termination payment? How does all that process work? Because that's what you need to put in place as the CEO of a not-for-profit, is you need to have all those steps in place, all those processes, all the people working together. So tying together the systems that you've got, the procedures that you've got, and the people that you've got to actually work efficiently and to deliver what you need to deliver for your not-for-profit to function. Now, obviously, you want someone with not-for-profit experience, so that's really important. And that really feeds into this next issue that you need support with. That is your government acquittal process. Now, for those who haven't run a not-for-profit before or aren't familiar with this is effectively where you get a grant usually from the government. It could actually be from anyone. And part of that grant is a requirement to go back and say where you've spent the money. So to acquit the funds. So to basically say, got this amount of cash, this is where we spent it. There's a couple of steps to the acquittal process. Now, obviously, people who are familiar with it think straight away to the end process where you spend all the money and you're basically reporting back to the government or whoever, say, this is where I spent all the money. And that's important. You need someone who can effectively be able to do that. But also I find along the way of that grant, so a grant could be for 3 months, 6 months, it could be 5 years. You want to make sure that throughout that process, you're aware of how much money you've received and that you have received the money for the grant. And also that the expenditure that you're incurring is in line with that. So you are actually not spending too much and not spending too little, but you are actually in line with the grant funds that you're spending. So you're not overspending and overcommitting yourself. And at the same time, that expenditure lines up with the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, because you usually get a grant to achieve a certain amount of outcomes. So you want to be clear on that. So there's not just an end process, and quite often when I have come across not-for-profits that are used to just doing, oh, we just do it at the end, quite often at the end there's a mad scramble to make sure, well, where did we spend this money? Like, what were the outputs? What happened? And quite often it can be quite an anxious period, whereas if you're doing that periodically through the grant process, everyone knows what's going on and you can adjust your operating procedures so that if you're not achieving the outcomes, or you can pivot them, or you can put more resources into an area, or if you're overcommitting in terms of expenditure because you just want to do more than you can pare it back to make sure that you're not overcommitting the organization. It's not stuff that you want to find out at the end of the process. So that grant accrual process is very important. Similarly, and it sort of feeds into then I suppose a broader thing, is that what your accountant should be providing you in terms of your whole organization is a greater level of transparency of what's going on. So we talked about the acquittals process specifically, because that is a very important and very specific to not-for-profits, but also more broadly, your accountant should be giving you very good transparency on how your organization is running. So these are things like a cash forecast. Cash forecast is very important to understand where you are from a cash point of view, that you're still got the cash to continue on, that you're not going to run out of cash. That's very important to have a clear sort of picture of where things are going. Your budget process is very important in not-for-profit because that often ties into your delegations to authority, which then gives transparency in terms of who can spend what and how much you can spend. And then also your financial statement and preparing those, which ties in with your board reporting as well. You want your financial statements to actually not be surprised when they're provided at the end of the year and you know what's coming, which then ties into making sure that the monthly reporting that you're doing to your board and to the CEO is helping you understand where the organization is at. So you want an accountant who can actually provide that transparency to your organization, so has those skill sets to be able to do a cash forecast, financial statements, board reporting, budgeting, and be able to provide those in a way that then ties into the financial mentoring, and that you as the CEO running that not-for-profit understands what's going on and how all these things fit together. Then lastly, and sometimes this is overlooked and seen as the easy part, but it is also vitally important, is that accurate data. So making sure that the data entry is up to date, but also captured accurately. There's a lot of permutations that happen with the data, especially with the acquittals process and feeding into that, but also your financial statements. You want to make sure data is captured both accurately, timely, efficiently, and also put in the right space so that when you are doing your reporting, it all makes sense. Now, some people think that, really you want to do that as cheaply as possible. I think you want to make it as cost effective as possible because you want things to be done well, but you also understandably want them to be done as efficiently as possible. In a reasonably quick nutshell, that is what I think an accountant should be offering a not-for-profit. You've got your financial mentoring as your starting point, your business process understanding, your transparency to the organization, your grant acquittals, and your data entry and making sure information is captured in the right spot. That's it for today's video. If you want some more information in terms of not-for-profits and how your accountant can help, or governance aspects of that, check out some other videos on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel because we have not-for-profit videos coming out quite regularly that help you run your not-for-profit. And if you've got any questions or comments, chuck them in the comments below. Happy to get back to you. Or check me out on LinkedIn, send me a direct message. Definitely happy to help in any way I can to ensure your not-for-profit flourishes. Thanks again for watching. It's Justin Hogg from RightSource.